Before she became a naked legend, she was one of the most powerful women in England. So who undressed her? History or storytelling? The story of a naked noblewoman riding through a medieval town became one of England's most enduring legends, but legends are rarely what they seem. In the mid-11th century, Coventry was a rising settlement in Anglo-Saxon England, part of the powerful earldom of Mercia. It was ruled by Leofric, Earl of Mercia, one of the most influential men in the kingdom. Under kings like Canute and Edward the Confessor, the great earls were pillars of political power. And beside Leofric stood his wife, Godiva, meaning God's gift. She was not a decorative consort. She appears in the Domesday Book of 1086 as a major landholder. Her name is associated with estates dozens of times. Even after the Norman conquest, she retained significant lands, something extraordinarily rare for an Anglo-Saxon woman. She was wealthy, politically relevant, deeply involved in religious patronage. Together, she and Leofric endowed monasteries across Mercia. Especially in Coventry itself, chroniclers described her as devout and generous. This is the woman history actually records, but the legend tells us something far more dramatic. It says that Leofric imposed a crushing tax upon the people of Coventry. Godiva, moved by their suffering, begged her husband to lift the burden, day after day, week after week, until, exasperated, Leofric answered with a cruel condition. He would repeal the tax if she rode naked through the streets of Coventry. According to the tale, she agreed. Before mounting her horse, she sent a proclamation through the town. Close your doors, shutter your windows, look away, not out of shame, but out of solidarity. She disrobed, mounted her horse, her long hair cascading down her body, shielding her modesty like a living veil, and Coventry obeyed. The streets fell silent. No laughter, no gasps, no witnesses, only the sound of hooves against stone. She rode from one end of the town to the market square and returned. Leofric, stunned that she had fulfilled the condition, had little choice but to honor his word. The tax was repealed, the people were freed, and thus, according to legend, a woman's courage overcame a lord's cruelty. But in the earliest versions of the story, there is no voyeur, no scandal, no punishment. The figure we now know as Peeping Tom does not appear until the 17th century, nearly 600 years after Godiva lived. In these later retellings, a local tailor cannot resist temptation. While the town keeps its promise, he peeks through his shutters to glimpse the passing noblewoman. Instead of desire fulfilled, legend delivers punishment. He is struck blind. And from that moment, the story changes. It becomes not only a tale of sacrifice, but a warning about the gaze. The name Peeping Tom enters the English language. Today, it means a voyeur, someone who watches what should not be watched. In a strange twist, the watcher becomes as famous as the writer. The invented man becomes culturally immortal. Here is where history grows uncomfortable. None of the early sources mention the naked ride, not the Domesday Book, not the 11th century chroniclers, not even John of Worcester, who writes extensively about Leofric and praises Godiva's religious devotion. The first written account of the ride appears in the 13th century, in Flora's Historiarum by Roger of Wendover, 200 years after her death. If this event truly shook Coventry, why did no one record it at the time? The real Godiva was powerful, a landowner, a political actor, a religious patron. Yet she is remembered almost exclusively for a moment of naked vulnerability. Why? Because spectacle travels further than administration, because sacrifice is easier to dramatize than governance, because stories prefer images, and perhaps because powerful women have often been rewritten into symbols. Her documented influence faded. The image of her body endured. The legend never disappeared. In Coventry, her ride is still reenacted in the annual Lady Godiva procession, a civic celebration that brings the myth back to the streets. Crowds gather, music plays, the story rides again. In the city center stands her statue, poised on horseback, and nearby, another figure, Peeping Tom. Even the watcher has been immortalized. Lady Godiva did not remain confined to Coventry. She entered cinema, she entered painting, she entered literature, and most famously, she gallops through the lyrics of Queen's 1978 hit, Don't Stop Me Now.
I'm a racing car passing by like Lady Godiva.
In that line, she is no longer a moral lesson. She is speed, freedom, momentum. The medieval noblewoman becomes a metaphor for unstoppable force. The legend keeps evolving. Before she became a naked legend, she was one of the most powerful women in England. We do not know whether she ever rode unclothed through Coventry, but we know this: history remembers her naked. History forgets her power. And maybe the real story is not about a woman who stripped, but about how history strips women of power and dresses them in myth. And still, she rides.